With it being a week since Charlie Kirk got killed, I'm reminded of the video I made last week asking everyone, now what? And since then, it's gotten dumber. Now that we've gotten the actual killer, now that he's going through the process of getting the death penalty.
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. That was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray. So that should be in the court's file. Lastly, I would just indicate to the court and to, at this point, Mr. Robinson, that we are prepared to collect all of the discovery in this matter and get that turned over to the defense as soon as possible. Rule 16 requires us to provide what we have relied on in charging the information and bringing these charges within 5 days once it's requested. So that'll be prepared to disseminate to the defense as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Grander. Mr. Robinson, what I also want to do is you have the right to have the charges read that you stand charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time. Thank you. Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76-3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years, that may be for life.
We now have all this information coming out about him, how he had a trans lover, trans roommate, trans partner. Now we got people pointing fingers at whose fault is it that Charlie Kirk got shot. Now we got Candace Owens on the scene blaming the Jews for everything. Now you got the conservatives all fighting for Charlie Kirk's corpse and the rights to the Turning Point USA and who's going to take it over. Now you got text messages coming out saying, oh, this is the documentation of what happened after he shot Charlie Kirk and him talking to his trans lover. And for some reason, people turning on their conspiracy theory goggles and saying, this is not how people talk to one another. So what the fuck was the point of even wanting this information if you're just gonna sit there and call it all a big fucking lie and somebody's playing in front of your face, even though we know that's what the government does most of the time? Why did we waste our time with any of that? And you know, I'm still wondering, now what? Because when you sit here and deal with the shock of seeing somebody who is a prominent figure in political discourse get a bullet to his neck, the important thing to wonder, after going through all the condolences, after all the vigils, after paying all the respect, after having all the fun with seeing people be hypocritical around free speech, the thing to wonder is how we progress so that this doesn't become a commonplace thing, because it would be disastrous if we all just sit here and treat this how we treat the children when they get shot. Thoughts and prayers, random conspiracy theories, talk about gun control, talk about how people are taking rights away, and then we rinse and repeat it until the next one, right? We don't want this to be a commonplace thing where political figures who are just speaking their minds and talking, whether if you agree with them or disagree with them, whether if they're saying something of common sense or saying something abhorrent, you would not want to see them getting shot, right? Well, one of those ideas that people have subtly thrown out there, and it's not a large portion of people, but it's enough to even bother discussing, have been discussing how the time for talk is magically over, how we're no longer speaking to our political opposition. The idea in our heads is a civil war. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you just one example of an individual who's hoping he gets the opportunity to be a part of a civil war.
Mr. President, I implore you, call for a civil war. Call for a civil war and let us do our thing. Let us go door to door, street by street, and clean this country. Please, if you're watching this, You share the same sentiment, send it to Donald Trump, share it on your page, whatever. Get this message out there. This is not a joke. I'm a peaceful man. Time for peace is over. I'm willing to fight and I'm willing to die. We are all Charlie Kirk.
Disastrous as this dumbass might sound, there are a lot of people who are in this camp sitting here begging for the opportunity to be allowed to knock on people's doors and I guess shoot them if they don't sit there on their knees and mourn a man who they either don't know, don't care about, or didn't agree with. And I'm going to sit here and be very honest with you. If you hold that standard, something might be wrong with you, because how do you think you're going to clean up society by killing a bunch of people blindly? That gets no one anywhere. That makes the world even worse than what it already is. That does not create the society where everyone could possibly understand each other or even have some sort of cordial dialect, because that is over. And it's making me realize that any type of political discourse and turning down the temperature around politics is not going to happen. Politics used to be this boring as fuck thing nobody paid attention to until it drastically affected them and compelled them to go vote, especially during the presidential elections. But now that majority of it is a bunch of smoke and mirrors and getting to bombastically debunk the rhetoric of a bunch of dumbass 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds, people have found a way to make it interesting. And that's a real crutch that people don't want to acknowledge. And we have reached a point where people will sit here and think to themselves, we're all Charlie Kirk. Please, President Trump, please give us that permission. Please give us the idea in our head to have access to knock on people's doors. Please, we need this, when it wouldn't make sense in the long run. I'm sorry if you feel as though you've been pressured and pushed back enough to the point where you now think the time for talk is over. But what type of cartoon villain do you think you are to sit there and think, yes, the best solution to turn down all the temperature is to start fucking killing people aimlessly if they don't agree with me in any form or fashion? That doesn't sound like turning the temperature down. That sounds like burning the fucking country to the ground. You want to know the funniest part about this dude in particular is that before posting that video, you would go to his account and see that he was on a journey with walking with God. Now, I don't know too much about other people's way to lead their life in the way the Bible intended, nor will I ever understand other people's journey while they're walking with the Lord. But the Lord must have spat at you for you to go on that journey and then say, hey, can I start knocking on people's doors, please, to shoot them? Because, we got to do something about all of this world and how evil it truly is. Because you know what? I feel like God would have some explaining to do if he was on a walk with me and then I ultimately decided, you know what? All I need is just permission from somebody to just start killing.
We want true justice. So give us the green light or handle it yourself with the military.
It's time, yo. It's time for a civil war.
Straw for me. It's fucking war.
War was declared today.
Now, as a veteran of about a dozen civil wars that the Republicans have threatened over the last decade, I can confidently say you're not going to do shit. Just like every other time. You're going to go back to work tomorrow, just like any other day. And by back to work, I mean stealing your neighbor's catalytic converter. I can confidently say that because this is all performative. You don't actually care. You just found a reason to be angry.
To all the silly billies out there who are seemingly excited that we may be close to a civil war, let me explain why you don't know history. Civil war is a very, very bad thing, even for you. The Civil War was the deadliest war in American history. About 620,000 people lost their lives during that war, and that was in a time with muskets. Now we're in a time with crazier technology like tanks, jets, and semi-automatic weapons. A civil war in present day would have way worse casualties. You, me, your friends and family all have a very high chance of becoming casualties of war. And let's not forget about the infrastructure. Can we talk about the infrastructure for a second? Because if a civil war happens, then the infrastructure in this country is destroyed. Roads are going to be undrivable because of craters. Buildings are going to be completely leveled and destroyed. Trucks are going to have problems delivering food to stores. Most of the basic necessities that you take for granted are going to be things of the past. Hope you're cool with having electrical and Wi-Fi outages for months or years. The whole entire country is going to be looking at a huge homeless problem because so many people's homes will have been destroyed. And you guys think that the economy's bad right now? It's going to be way worse. The rebuilding process to the last Civil War lasted about 10 to 15 years. Can you imagine how long it's going to take now, since war has evolved quite a bit since then? Inflation has been through the roof for the last 5 years since COVID. Some of you guys have lost your homes. Some of you guys are barely holding on right now. Could you last another 10, 20 years of this? Because that's what a civil war looks like. It doesn't matter if your side wins. You're still screwed. A civil war is not going to be the fun time that you think it's going to be. I'm sick and tired of the political bullshit that is happening in this country right now. Let me explain something to you real quick that you guys need to understand. Literally no politician out there gives a shit about you. So why are you prepared to go out there and literally take American lives for one of these rich bozos that you have nothing in common with? I know you don't want to hear this, but you probably have a whole lot more in common with me than any of your favorite politicians out there. So how about, instead of telling everybody civil war's coming, you shut the fuck up and try to prevent that from happening?
Oh, well, Leon, what's your bright idea then? Since you think you know everything and you think this is a bad idea, why don't you tell me your idea? Once again, I have to remind you all that you have to be comfortable with saying out loud that you have no idea what to do in a current moment. Do you think one guy who is the sexiest black YouTuber to exist on this website can have an idea on how to turn the political temperature down with an entire country full of people who just argue about nothing on a daily basis? It's impossible. You could come up with pie in the sky ideas, but it all comes down to not getting on your knees and praying to God, but having ultimate trust in all of humanity, which is something none of us are ever going to do. I hate the fact that as it goes on, it seems like we're going to be in a type of society where it's just going to have to be commonplace, where political figures, whether big or small, might end up with a bullet in their face, and all we're going to see after is finger pointing, people blaming the Jews, people not believing the evidence in front of their face, questions, a body that's going to just be left to bare and buried to the ground, and then we're just going to move on to the next person. It sucks that it seems like we might end up in that type of commonplace type society. I don't want to be there, but that's how it's looking, where we have significant people just being put to the ground and nobody seemingly cares past a week. Everybody's going to get their hits and clicks. Everybody's going to make their bombastic statements. Everybody's going to side eye. Everybody's going to make their jokes. And ultimately, it's just going to be another thing, which technically might already be a type of normal thing, where the cycle just spins and spins and spins and spins. And that's the sick part that I believe a lot of people are not willing to talk about, because it's more important to just start yelling out how you want a civil war. It's more important to start yelling out how, oh, who's next? It's more important to just blame the Jews. It's more important to waste everybody's fucking time rather than finding a real solution. And the sick part is, I don't think people have it. Now, it would be great if we could turn the temperature down around political discourse, but I need to remind you all that Trump almost got a bullet to his face, and the conversation after that was turning the temperature down. And I think we all know that that did not happen. So do you think it's going to happen this time? Or do you think it's just going to get very worse for everyone who's just sitting there watching the world burn? And I leave you to answer that in the comment section down below. Subscribe. See y'all in the next one. No, there will be no civil war. And that man and anyone who could possibly think that what he's saying makes sense are lunatics. Mwah. Bye-bye.